But now, without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all tonight to join us as Colin showcases his birding expertise, which is immense, specifically his birding experiences during a recent visit to Mexico. Colin is one of the best birders that I've ever encountered, both by sight and by ear. And so I'm very, very interested and excited to hear what he has to say tonight. Just a general introduction, Colin is a junior at the University of Illinois, studying in NRE, so in the natural resources and environmental sciences. But Colin also really runs many other birding projects and many other projects, conservation-based projects. For example, Colin has recently taken, or not even recently, has within the last few years taken over the birdstrike program, which is a massive effort at UIUC on campus. But like I said, tonight, Colin will be telling us more about his recent trip to Mexico. And so with that, I'll hand it over to you, Colin.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Alita, and give me a second to get the program aligned here. Everyone can hear me correctly, right?
Yes, and I just want to apologize in advance that I'll have my video off. I'm watching it with my folks, so it's a bit awkward if I have my video on.
Give me 1 second. Get this lined up here. All right. Here we go. All right. Everyone can see it perfectly?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Colin Dobson, and I will be talking about my recent trip to southern Mexico. We were there, my grandfather and I, from March 13th to March 20th in the states of Oaxaca and Chiapas, Mexico. But there we go. So you can get it to go. But anyways, about me, Alita did a little introduction about me. I'm 21 years old, a junior in NRES, Natural Resource and Environment Science at University of Illinois here in Champaign, Urbana. I've been a lifelong avid bird watcher, as you can see me here, holding a common redpoll that we banded at during our ornithology class at Homer Lake back in March. And then me in the background here with the tornado in the background last August. I'm an avid bird watcher, photographer, and storm chaser. President of our group here, Champaign County Audubon, and originally from Jacksonville, Illinois, which is just west of Springfield. I'm a co-author. I wrote when I was a senior in high school, a guide to finding birds along the Illinois River Flyway. And as Alita mentioned, I run numerous research projects like the Window Strike Survey, and here on campus, like we found black and white warbler and palm warbler today as window strikes this morning. We just presented at the undergrad research symposium last week and looking at birds at organic farm properties over by Paxton, Illinois as well, along with other projects. Anyways, there's myself. Time to get into the program itself. So as you can see, I just did 2 quick little maps from Google Earth, Google Maps. So this is obviously the country of Mexico. We were visiting here in Oaxaca and Chiapas in the far southern parts of Mexico, and then the southern parts of Oaxaca, and mostly the western and central parts of Chiapas. And to get a little more in depth of where we were, did this quick little drawing on Google Maps. So we flew out of Chicago, we flew into Hualtuco, which is a region in southern Oaxaca. We had a brief layover in Mexico City, and actually we were delayed and was a little worried about timing and getting into Hualtuco, but we ended up arriving only a few minutes late. I have this numbered as the number of nights we were at each spot, with arrows going from each spot. So our first night was here in Pluma Hidalgo. It's kind of how the program will run. Pluma Hidalgo, which was just above the Hualtuco region, up in the mountains a little higher up above at the Pacific Ocean. Then the next day we birded our way down back into the Hualtuco region and stayed there overnight. And then on the third night, we birded our way towards Tehuantepec and the region Tehuantepec and the isthmus of Tehuantepec. And then we entered Chiapas on our 4th day of birding and stayed in Arriaga, where we birded before we got to Arriaga that night. We birded around Puerto Risto, around the ocean in Chiapas. And then the last few days of the trip, the last 2 or 3 nights actually, we stayed in Tuxtla Gutierrez and birded around there, birded areas to the east, over by San Cristobal, and in even areas to the west over by the Octero Reserve. and we hired a guide. It was very sudden trip. I originally told my grandfather I didn't want to go anywhere. I was going to be too busy for spring break. And then he was like, "Are you sure you don't want to go anywhere?" And I was like, "All right, we'll go somewhere." So he quickly sent out some emails. We luckily had David McKay reach back out to us within less than a month of us going. He had a brief opening, so we decided to take it during my spring break. So his name is David McKay. As you can see, I was trying to take a video of giant wrens, which is an endemic wren to Mexico. David's here just to my right. So he's the owner and lead guy at Sally Paso Tours, and he leads tours all throughout Mexico, all times of the year, and beyond Mexico as well. He's highly recommended. He was great. So this is as we arrived. So this is the Sunday when we flew down there on the 13th. This is the airport in Hualtuco. As typical Central and South America style, you land on the runway. You pretty much get exited on the runway instead of actually having to go to an actual gate. So we're let off on the runway. This is the small airport as we got into Hualtuco. And from there, we ended up going up into the mountains just above the Hualtuco region. And this is the road up. It's a quite windy road, but we ended up making numerous stops around there to see all the birds that were mostly new to me. I guess I didn't say at the very beginning. We had 313 species on this trip and about 6 full days of birding, which is very short time with that many species. And about 120 of these were life birds for me, so birds I'd never seen before. So this is the view as we were going up the mountains there, just above where we landed. So we started seeing some new birds for me and some new birds in general. So this is a happy wren. So this is a bird endemic to Mexico. So it can only be seen in Mexico. So I think we saw about 20 to 25 endemic Mexican birds there. So birds that only found in Mexico throughout this trip out of those 313 species. So this is a happy wren. And this is the banded wren. So it's a little larger. But most of the wrens were actually really hard to see throughout the trip. We heard most of the species calling, but some of them being a little nasty and being a little skulky. So some of them were hard to see, but luckily the happy wren and this banded wren very early on were giving good views. And also my first boat flycatcher I'd ever seen. So the great kiskadee can be seen in South Texas. So this is very close relative to that. And there's another close relative I will show you guys pictures of in a little bit. So this is the boat flycatcher. And this is one of the first hummingbirds of the trip, and actually is the only time we saw these on the trip. So we had a pair of, or actually 2 males, not a pair. We had 2 male long-billed starthroats, this gorgeous blue cap and reddish pink throat. It was pretty cool to see within the first hour of birding. So and then we went up to, we made our way up to Pluma Hidalgo, a small little mountainside town. Where we were staying that night was about a mile or 2 from the town in this little hotel resort. So we had this little dirt road that led to the hotel about a mile. So this is the view from that road as we head up. So very dense forest, very high up. You can kind of see how high up we were because this is very low elevation in the background. So because of this, in these new areas, we ended up seeing plenty of new birds, including the red-crowned ant-tanager and this black-headed saltator. We saw many of these. This is a good look at one, the black-headed saltator. The first greenish Elanias of the trip. So this is a flycatcher. There's many species of Elanias throughout South and Central America, but this is the greenish Elania. And here's a picture of me on that dirt road I was talking about. It was actually quite busy, but just showing the background and the road itself. So then we got to our hotel, which was named Finca Don Gabriel. So this is an amazing view that we had from there. Just could see the ocean. You can see the ocean, which was probably about 40 miles away, maybe. It was a great view, 2,000-3,000 feet up. And a great view from this is actually from the hotel itself. So it was great. And here's from the room. I have another picture later on the next morning from my room. It was sitting on the bed here. The beautiful view outside the bed on the balcony there. That was quite stunning. I definitely will be back someday. And of course, as always, with all my programs, I always take pictures of the food from the trip. So this is a quick little snack before we headed out for birding for the rest of the day. And here's me from the hotel. The hotel had a little restaurant, so that's where that was from. But here's from the balcony from the hotel, again with the beautiful view behind me. So then we went up the road a little bit, little bit more north of the hotel in Pluma Hidalgo. We moved our way up a little bit, up the mountain a little bit. So this is another endemic bird that we wanted to see. This is the blue-capped hummingbird. And not new for me, but another Central to South American bird. This is the masked titira. So this is the male masked titira. This is the female masked titira. And then here's the beautiful view from the road that we were on just above Pluma Hidalgo. Big, thick forests, a lot of new bird species, but just to give a view of what it looked like. Just another view of the forest around there. And then that night we went back into Pluma Hidalgo. This town is only about a couple thousand people. This is a beautiful little church. Nightlife was interesting because it was my first time in Mexico, so it was interesting just to see the people and the culture around these small little towns. And I just took this quick picture because David pointed out, I didn't even see it until he pointed it out. The beautiful view. I don't even play basketball, but I would love to play basketball with this kind of view behind us. This beautiful sunset with the mountains in the background behind the basketball court. It was great to see that. So anyways, the next morning we ended up going back to our hotel that night. My phone died, so I didn't get the picture of the meal that night. But this was the next morning from my balcony, from my room, the sunrise over the beautiful mountains. It was great to see this. It was beautiful, quite stunning. Even before the sun came up, the area was full of birds. This is Audubon's oil, so dark because the sun was just coming up. But even after the sun came up, the light was pretty bad. So some of these pictures are kind of rough in the morning, but we had a lot of birds just from the balcony and having breakfast on the balcony that morning. So this is the first. We heard a few the day before, but we didn't see any yet. So this is the northern emerald toucanet. So this is just a smaller size of a toucan. So this is the northern emerald toucanet and a female blue bunting. I have an okay picture of a male later on, but which is quite stunning. Actually, I think I have one coming up soon, but it's just the female blue bunting. So then we took that same road I mentioned that we took the day before on down the hotel a little bit, from the hotel a little bit. It was a lot birdier today. We saw a lot more birds. So this is another lifer for me. This is a rusty sparrow. And this is the blue bunting. The light was pretty bad where it was, but this is the blue bunting. It's fairly dark blue overall with some patches of light blue throughout. So quite stunning bird. Our first white-throated magpie jays of the trip. We had several the day before, but the first pictures I took of them for the trip. A very large jay with a little tuft on the head. These are the most common hummingbirds up in this area. So this is a berry-line hummingbird, which occasionally shows up in Arizona. Another greenish Alania that was checking me out, that came very close to me. This is a fan-tailed warbler. That was the first slide that had the background from the southern Mexico, the first slide of the program. But this is a fan-tailed warbler, also endemic to Mexico, but occasionally can show up in the US, very rarely. You can see it's fanning its tail out there. It's kind of blurry there. It's kind of fanning its tail out there. A beautiful little warbler. And another warbler, another one new for me. This is a golden crowned warbler. And we went back to the hotel really quick to pack our things up and to move on. So this is the view from the bed again. Beautiful mountains in the background. Not even high mountains really, but just high hills and stuff. It was quite the scenery. So we ended up working our way north of Pluma Hidalgo before getting to Highway 175 to work our way back down the Hualtuco region. So this is another greenish Alania. We burned around the main road first, and then we took a dirt road just before we got to Highway 175. This is blue-headed vireo, a bird that's semi-common migrant. And that's actually going through right now here. So this is the only black hawk eagle of the trip. I wasn't really expecting to see this one. It was cool to see this flying above the hills with numerous turkey vultures and black vultures. The sun was relatively bad on this, of course, but this is the first golden crowned emerald of the trip. So the flame-colored tanager, another lifer for the trip, but also occasionally shows up in Arizona. There's actually a few in Arizona right now that just showed up in the last week. But another rare bird of the US, but a lifer for me. So that looks like maybe a male, if not maybe a first-year male with some yellow coming in here. Flame-colored tanager. Relatively blurry. Decided to focus on this little web of viney stuff right in front. This is another lifer for me, very similar to our pileated woodpecker here. This is a pale-billed woodpecker. Someone could almost say it's ivory-billed woodpecker, but it's not. We had more golden crowned warblers, a little better looks than before. You see the nice golden crown on it right here where my mouse is. And more northern emerald toucanets up on this. This is when we went to the dirt road. This is birds from the dirt road right before we got to the Highway 175, just north of Pluma Hidalgo. This is another northern emerald toucanet. And this is the butt of a collar trogon. I think David pointed out, maybe Tony might have picked it. I don't remember who picked it out, but I was just sitting on the branch. As soon as I raised the camera to my face, it decided to flush. So I got the butt of it right when it was taking off. So we saw four trogon species on the trip. So I have other pictures of all the other ones throughout the program. So a bird I was really wanting to see, because it can be pretty hard to see. This is a type of flycatcher. It's called the eye-ring flatbill. So it's a very unique high-pitched call that is can be hard to see. So it was cool to get good looks at this one. See a nice eye ring on it. So this is a brownback solitaire nest. We were walking and had a brownback solitaire, which is also a lifer for me, but I ended up getting good pictures of one. But this is the nest that it flew out of, right on the cliffside, actually, right next to the road. And then we got saw this the first roadside hawk of the trip, another lifer for me. This is a juvenile roadside hawk. We ended up seeing many adults after this. And then right after this sighting, we had a bat falcon fly right by us, but it was flying too quick, as falcons usually do, to get a picture of it. So this is the picture of the scenery from there as well. Very thick forests, very thick understory, and even very thick tree densities as well. So it was very thick forest higher up here. And from here, we ended up taking Highway 175 on down back by the coast. We made a couple stops along the way. Here's the scenery going down that road again, right before we got to 175. Just beautiful scenery throughout the trip, of course. As I said, we made a couple stops along Highway 175 to see plenty of birds, a few new birds for the trip. So we stopped by this little creek just right off the highway with a little waterfall here. This is a golden vireo, not a good picture, but another bird endemic to Mexico, was one we were all wanting to see. This is the oak red bellied flycatcher, which is actually kind of out of range here. We were surprised to see it, so I had to take some pictures of it. It was kind of interesting to see because it was kind of out of range there. And then straight above me, so you couldn't get too good pictures of it, but you can see a nice rose-throated on this rose-throated Picard, this nice male rose-throated Picard. And then, of course, throughout the trip, we saw numerous cool plants and animals and even butterflies. This is just a cool little butterfly. I saw with the cool pink spots on it. So anyways, we kept moving on down, and then we got back down to the Hualtuco region, and we were just driving through one of these towns, and we all looked to our left, and don't usually see this in America, just this open meat market with whole cows and stuff, just not probably accurately temperatured or anything. It's just something I'm not used to, so it's just interesting to point out as we're going through the town. So then we got to the ocean side, of course, and this nice little bay, this nice little cove for lunch. We started seeing numerous new birds for the trip, including this magnificent frigate bird and royal terns and laughing gulls and brown pelicans, the typical ocean birds once you get into South Mexico. So it's cool starting to see these for the trip. So of course, continue on with the food. This is shrimp quesadillas. And of course, throughout the trip, we had guacamole with just about every meal, and I had freshly squeezed lemonade with about every meal. So it was very, very good food, very good. We were taken care of, obviously, very well, but of course, very good food throughout the entire trip. And then the parking lot of the restaurant, we had this calling social flycatcher, as I brought up earlier with the boat flycatcher. There's three species that look relatively similar. The great kiskadee, which can be actually seen in southern Texas, the boat flycatcher photographed earlier, and the social flycatcher. So this is, after that, we dropped our stuff off at the hotel there, and then we started to go towards the Parque Nacional Hualtuco, so right there by the ocean, to see the birds in that afternoon. So right when we left this hotel, David's like, I hear parrots. So we looked up, and sure enough, there were two of these white-fronted parrots right above us, in front, right above the car along the road. But we ended up seeing many of those in the national park. saw probably dozens of these in the national parks. This is another white-fronted parrot, another lifer for me. So now we're obviously, like I just mentioned, we're in the national park now. So we parked at this dead end road and walked about a mile and a half. This mile and a half trail that went down to the ocean and back. We saw plenty of good birds on there. There's another picture of a white-throated magpie jay. The first golden-cheeked woodpecker of the trip, another lifer for me. Cinnamon hummingbird, which is another lifer for me. As I said, I had 120 lifers, so I'll just mention anytime any of the birds were lifers. So it was very good trip for me. So one of the most wanted birds of the trip was this red-breasted chat. It's another bird endemic to Mexico, all around the western coast of Mexico. Actually not related to our yellow-breasted chat that we have here in Illinois. Actually just arrived. I just saw my first one yesterday and here in central Illinois, but this is not related to that. But it's endemic to Mexico. It was very cooperative male. We ended up seeing a female and another male later on in the trip. Yeah, this was cool bird to get, another lifer for me, of course. And West Mexican chachalacas were common in calling throughout this park. Very, very common in this park. And this is actually an endemic trogon to Mexico. This is the citrulline trogon. We saw a few throughout the trip. They're all being kind of difficult. This is the best picture I got of one. But just pretty much has a yellow belly and this kind of black and greenish back here, the yellow eye. But another bird endemic to Mexico and the second trogon species of the trip. And this is a russet crown motmot. Saw numerous, these were numerous throughout the trip, but this is, I think, the first one of the trip. But it's through the foliage, you can see kind of the leaves here in the picture, but little open space just to get this bird. It's one of my favorite birds of the trip. You'll see more pictures of it later on. So we got down to the ocean along this trail, started seeing more ocean birds like royal tern flying by and these flock of pelicans flying by. And of course, this beautiful scenery when we got down to the ocean, this nice island here, but beautiful scenery and a nice sunset at the end of the day. A good way to end the day with this scene. And then we're walking back. We had some chachalacas and trees, and Dave's like, oh, maybe get one with the picture of the moon in the background. Sure enough, there was one just the perfect spot to get a picture of a chachalaca and the moon in the background, right at dark. Of course, we got numerous birds here. We started getting night birds because we didn't get back to the car until after dark. So then we spotted this bird right in front of us. And luckily, I think Tony, my grandfather, had his flashlight with him. So he shined it. Sure enough, this was a common paraque, and ended up videoing on my phone. I don't have a video on this program, but ended up videoing on this phone that ended up displaying right in front of us, and a second one came and joined it. But we ended up having many common paraques on the trail on the way back. And we also heard mottled owl and Pacific screech out here as well. So then we went back to the hotel for the night, and the next morning we got up fairly early again. This is a rufous-naped wren that was singing right outside the hotel. We actually had a nice list of birds right outside the hotel. We had about 20 species before we even left the hotel that morning. So this is the rufous-naped wren, which is another lifer for me, and more birds like rufous-backed robin, Altamira oriole, among other things. And this gray breasted martin was another bird, but we ended up seeing dozens of these throughout the day. This is right outside the hotel as well. So we ended up going to another dirt road about maybe 20 minutes northeast of where we stayed that night. Northwest of where we stayed that night, in the Hualtuco region still. We parked and walked for about 2 or 3 hours, seeing numerous birds around there. So this is actually the first lifer of the trip that I had on the first day, but I didn't get pictures of it. So this is the orange-fronted parakeet. Finally had one that was fairly cooperative. And more female blue buntings. This is another female blue bunting. And of course, this is one of the more colorful birds of the trip. There's better pictures of this bird later in the day I have coming up in the program here in about 10 minutes. This is the first orange-breasted bunting of the trip. I believe this is another endemic to Mexico as well. But it's much more widespread than the bunting that Tony and I, my grandfather, came to see, of course. But this is the first orange-breasted bunting, so of course another lifer. So the olive sparrow, bird that one can see in southern Texas, but is common throughout Mexico. So we saw plenty of these along the road. So the first white-lurled gnatcatchers of the trip. Of course, it seemed like every day we heard plenty, and we usually saw a few Frigids pygmy owls throughout the trip. So I don't think there might have been one day we didn't get on the trip, but Most days we were hearing, if not seeing, fruitless pygmy owls throughout the trip. And just because we're in Mexico doesn't mean we don't see some North American birds. So, and some of these warblers that go through and nest here also winter down there. So this is an ovenbird. I think we saw like 15, 20 species of warblers on this trip. And at least half of them were from Eastern US, or at least nest in the Eastern US. So this is one of those, this is the ovenbird. And here's David and I, our guide. We were on this road. This is what the road looked like. And it's actually surprisingly busy. We had a few cars go by, which was a little surprising with how little it looked traveled, but just a view of what it looked like, kind of a drier habitat, but still very thick forest. And it was kind of in this ravine next to this creek. We were listening to a collared forest falcon in the background. We ended up never seeing it. It was cool listening to that, of course. And then me trying to photograph a blue bunting. As you will see in the next picture, it was not too cooperative. We had a few males right in front of us, but they were very flushing, very skulky. So they would never just sit still or when they get their pictures taken. So this is the best picture I got of it. You can still see the relatively light, the beautiful light blue patches that it has on it, but not what I wanted, of course. But nonetheless, a beautiful bird, a bird I love to see when I'm down south. Luckily, I saw this in Texas a few years ago when we were down one winter. So they do occasionally show up in the US, but very rarely. So this is the main target of the morning along this road. Looks just like our great crested flycatcher, but is much duller. But the main key feature is this white line by the eye. This is a flammulated flycatcher, which is also another bird endemic to Mexico and another lifer for me. So it just pretty much looks like our great crested flycatcher, but just duller in that little white line by the eye. So yeah, it was good to see. Another olive sparrow as we're leaving the trail. They're, like I said, very common along that road. So just a quick little stop back at the hotel to get our things to move on. Occasionally throughout the trip, David had obviously always was providing us some snacks. So it's just cool having these little mini bananas. I've never seen many bananas like this before. So it was cool to eat them and something interesting to have, of course. So then we went back to the ocean, went back to the beach, went to this little estuary along the ocean, but this is the ocean itself where we were. Plenty of new birds. Actually, I spotted some shorewaters flying offshore that ended up being wedge-tailed shorewaters. Wasn't expecting any seabirds of the trip, but luckily got some shorewaters from the shore, actually. So here's me and David scoping those shorewaters from the shoreline. Nice scenery in the background, a lot of rocks. There's kind of a high cliff just to the right here. And here's the estuary where the local river, small river that just ended right by the ocean, creating this huge little estuary, this big water area with a small little stream that led to the ocean. There's a lot of birds here, a lot of wading birds, like our first tricolored herons and reddish egrets of the trip and snow egrets of the trip. Peregrine falcon, belted kingfisher, numerous other things. But of course, we had all these frigate birds, magnificent frigate birds that were coming in and taking baths. I'm assuming because it was freshwater, but taking baths in the water right in front of us. So they were coming in. This is a rather ratty looking frigate bird. There's dozens of frigate birds coming and taking baths in the streams. There's numerous, if not dozens, of black vultures around here. So it's a black vulture that just sat right next to us. Like I said, snowy egret. Most of the other waders are way too far out to take pictures, but the snowy egret was quite cooperative. And another life for me, David spotted these collared plovers, which is a common bird throughout Central and South America, but of course was a lifer for me. So something somewhat similar to looking to a killdeer, but it's just slightly smaller. As we saw 6 of these here, and they're quite cooperative. And of course, another cinnamon hummingbird back down in these lower elevation. Cinnamon hummingbird was quite common. So then we ended up going back to the same place where we had lunch the day before, and great-tailed grackles. I think we saw them every day of the trip, but were very common and were the house sparrows of restaurants, and at least where we were, at least at this place. So usually, like in towns and cities, house sparrows can usually be right around restaurants trying to get food. But where we were, great-tailed grackles were those house sparrows, and they're walking around literally at our feet trying to get stuff from us at these restaurants. I guess I should have looked to even see if there's a grackle, but anyways, usually they're just walking around at our feet here. But here's David and I having lunch there. Quite colorful seating arrangement here, but here's the restaurant right along the beach where we ate the day before. And of course, more shrimp quesadillas are really good. As I said, continues, you guys will see. The food was very good throughout the trip. And here's another rufous nape wren. I had that pictured from earlier in the day, but this was just along the sidewalk at the restaurant. So another good picture of that. So then we ended up driving 2 hours to the east from where we were towards Tehuantepec, which is just about an hour west of the border of Chiapas. So the Tehuantepec isthmus, the isthmus of Tehuantepec is the area where right before the Yucatan, where it's about 30 to 40 miles, I believe. The narrowest part of land in Mexico. So this is that region. So we ended up going to a road looking for the bird that we wanted to see the most. I'll say that in a little bit whenever the pictures come of that. But we actually didn't get it this afternoon. It was very windy. But this is its cousin, the most related to it, the orange-breasted bunting. I already had a picture of that from earlier that morning, but looks were much better in the afternoon at this location. Getting much better looks at this beautiful, stunning, endemic, kind of what I would say the painted bunting of this region, multicolored, multicolored bunting. But of course, we saw plenty of painted buntings throughout this trip as well, but quite stunning. And then, we had this herd of cattle just walking around the road. It ended up being a rancher. It had about 20 cattle, just went right by us. And another, even more range restricted than the species that we're looking for here, but this is the cinnamon-tailed sparrow, another endemic, but it's very, very narrow range and mostly east central Oaxaca, barely reaching into Chiapas, but this is the cinnamon-tailed sparrow, another endemic to Mexico. So this is the species I was talking about. So we ended up going back to our hotel in Tehuantepec. And the next morning we got up, we actually had a pair of barn owls at the hotel that night. So then we went back to the same road north of Tehuantepec by about 30 minutes the next morning. And we luckily, right when we stopped, we got the bird we wanted, of course. So this is the rose-bellied. I'm getting mixed up with the orange-breasted bunting. The rose-bellied bunting, formerly known as the Rosita's bunting. So this is a female. So this is the main reason, like I said, we went on the trip. My grandfather, Tony, has always wanted to see this bird. So I figured if we wanted to go somewhere, then maybe we should go see this bird. So luckily, like I said, the day before it was too windy. We ended up missing it. And yes, maybe we did get a few right when we got there, but we ended up not seeing any of the males, which is the one that you want to see. It's the most beautiful. It's obviously the most beautiful plumage, rose-bellied bunting, of course. But so this is a female. This is another female, of course, quite dull, not as stunning as the male looks. But later on the program, thankfully, we did get later on in the trip, we did get some males. The pictures of that will be later, but not this location where they're supposed to be. And here's a young male, a rose-bellied bunting, with a perfect background seeing a lifer. This bird is a range-restricted range. Probably the range is about as long as about maybe 100 miles. So it's a very, very limited range. But in these environments with all this trash and stuff, it was interesting to see. And of course, here's me trying to photograph that first year male. Trash is everywhere. It was right near a highway, so this was a mess. But just thinking of these very range restricted birds in these shrubby environments that is absolutely full of trash, literally feeding. That male was actually feeding in the trash. That first year male was feeding in the trash. So it's quite interesting to see that, of course. And then, of course, since we were back at that same road, we had more cinnamon-tailed sparrows. Like I said earlier, pictured was a few slides ago, but here's another picture of that. And we tried to bird that area more because we didn't see any males yet, and there were supposed to be a few males there. So we ended up going off-road a little bit. Didn't see any males, but saw plenty of other birds, including this male white-lured gnatcatcher that was quite noisy. And here's Dave. We ran into another cattle herd in there. I think he was asking the cattle if he had seen any male rose-bellied buntings, but I don't think the cow had an answer for him, but because we didn't see any after that. But anyways, never know what you'll run into in the shrubland forest in Mexico. It's a random herd of cattle. And right before we left there, we had numerous raptors flying around. But another picture of a groove-billed ani. It's not a raptor, but I was mentioning other birds that we saw there. But this is a groove-billed ani. We saw a couple groove-billed anis right before we left. Those can actually be seen in southern Texas. But because the isthmus of Tehuantepec is a small area between the Caribbean Ocean, and which is obviously the Atlantic side of Mexico. And the Pacific Ocean is quite windy. So there's thousands of wind turbines in this isthmus region. So it's just completely lined of wind turbines, which is interesting because they're all in lines. Here, they're not really in lines. They're kind of just scattered throughout agriculture environments. But in this area, they were all lined, which was kind of interesting to note. So then we started to work our way towards Puerto Arista, which is in the Chiapas area, but we weren't obviously in Chiapas yet. So we made a couple roadside stops at a few streams and a few ponds on our way before we left to Oaxaca, the state of Oaxaca. So we stopped at one stream, added plenty of new birds to the trip. So these are least grebes, which you can also see in southern Texas. So this was not a life for me, but saw plenty of least grebes at this one stream. A clay-colored thrush, which is another new bird for the trip, but is also a bird. Thankfully, it's increased its range, and you can see it in Texas as well. Very South Texas. But this is a lifer for me. This is an Amazon kingfisher. The first one, I think maybe the only one of the trip. Maybe saw one more elsewhere, but this was the best look we had of one. And then we continued on to some ponds just after this. And this is another lifer for me. This is the Northern Jacana, and quite a scenery appropriate here with more trash at this pond. Getting a lifer and a picture with more trash. But this is a male Northern Jacana. Occasionally can show up in the US, but it's common throughout Central America. So we saw a few males here and saw some females later on in the day. Like I said earlier, this is I showed an immature roadside hawk earlier in the presentation, but here's a male, or sorry, not a male, an adult roadside hawk that was right next to the road. And the ponds had numerous waders as well. So these are the first white ibis of the trip, actually. And here's a great egret, which is obviously a bird that we can see here in Illinois now. So some more birds there. And there's plenty of vultures and caracaras at the ponds as well. So this is a crested caracara on the left, which you can see in the southern US, and then turkey vulture, of course, that's around here. So then after that, after about 30 minutes drive after that pond, we were entering the state of Chiapas. So one of the most southern states of Mexico for the rest of the trip. We were in the state of Oaxaca for the rest of the trip. So then we made it towards Puerto Arista. It's just a little oceanside town. So before we got there, we birded this road for about an hour before we went and had lunch. So this is a first year or a young bare-throated tiger heron. We ended up seeing two more later in the day, but this is a lifer for me as well. And this is not a lifer for me, but this is a female blue-black grassquit. Saw these in Trinidad when I was a few years ago. But this was a lifer for me. This is a ruddy-breasted seed eater. So this is, I think we only saw 2 species of seed eaters on the trip. But yeah, this is the ruddy-breasted seed eater. Of course, we were at this little pond. All these pictures were taken at this little pond, and there's numerous crocodiles here. So it's interesting. There's a few crocodiles at this pond, but there's about a dozen Northern Jacanas. This is a female Northern Jacana, but just walking on the pads on top of the water at this lake. So you would think crocodiles might have some lunch or dinner sometime, but the Jacanas are just running all around, so they must have not been too concerned. But the main reason we came to this region was for this endemic called the giant wren. Is only endemic to coastal Chiapas. So it's interesting to see. This is wren about almost the size of a robin. Just think about a Carolina wren here, but a wren size of a robin. So this is aptly named the giant wren because it's a huge wren. But like these palm trees. So it's cool to get that. And we saw some more later on as well. So at lunch, we went to this lunch place called Restaurant Flamingos, perfect for any birding group. We actually ran into another birding group there. Yes, of course, we had lunch there at a bird named restaurant, and I had shrimp empanadas. They're really good. Of course, they're very good. Let's see. And then we ended up birding for the rest of the day around Puerto Arista. So this is a golden fronted woodpecker. So we pretty much birded the local lagoons and backwaters of the areas around there. So we saw plenty of water birds the rest of the day. So here's neotropic cormorant, which can be seen in the southern U.S. and occasionally be seen in Illinois now. Their range is expanding, so they're becoming more and more increasingly common in Illinois. Here's an adult bare-throated tiger heron. It showed a much duller, more barred juvenile or first-year bare-throated tiger heron a few slides ago, but here's the adult. The nice, I guess, technically bare-throated color there, but kind of an orange-colored throat, the black crown and gray head. Cool to see. And here's another pair of giant wrens that ended up being right above us. That was the slide where I had showing the guide at the very beginning of this presentation. That's what I was trying to take videos of, was this pair of giant wrens. This very distant laughing falcon, which is also another lifer for me. It was very distant. This picture is very cropped, but yeah, another lifer for me. So as I said, we birded lagoons and backwaters of Puerto Arista. You can see this, the coastal mountains in the background here. But here's one of the lagoons we were at. We saw numerous gulls, numerous wading birds like anhinga, roseate spoonbills, tricolored heron, just name it. Most of the Central American waders were here. Numerous gulls, a lot of shorebirds at this next spot, as you guys can see here. Not much mudflat available here, but we actually saw about, I don't know, probably 12 plus species of shorebirds here. Numerous roosting royal terns and sandwich terns and cormorants, pelicans, wading birds, you name it, they were here. There's a nice little backdrop here with what was there. There's a tricolored heron with black-necked stilts and great-tailed grackle and numerous laughing gulls and royal terns and snowy egret, and you can tell it's just absolutely full of birds here. Just a couple shorebirds. There's a leaf sandpiper. You can see its yellow legs here, and a semi-palmated plover here in the front of the picture. So for some more shorebirds, and then probably one of the better birds of the afternoon, a common migrant in Mexico, but we didn't really expect to see it yet, which is very interesting. So there's a Franklin's gull next to a laughing gull. I actually pointed it out at the first location, and it's like, oh, that's like a Franklin's gull. But then it looks, I can't see it too well because I got it now. I had to move something real quick. But it had a lot of black on the outer primaries. So usually Franklin's gull has quite a bit of quite a bit of white spotting on these outer primaries here at the end of the wing. But as you can tell, it looks very similar to the laughing gull on the left. So these are supposed to have white dots in them, but they didn't. So it looked like a laughing gull at first, and then it ended up sitting. And obviously see the differences between them now. So it's a nice little comparison between laughing gull and Franklin's gull, even though it did not have the right outer primary. So it's cool to see. And of course, more leaf sandpipers in the frame as well in the picture. So then we ended that afternoon birding some local roads between there and where we stayed that night in Arriaga, in the very western part of Chiapas, but nice scene with the mountains, the Pacific coastal mountains in the background, the nice little savanna here. Actually, this tree on the right had about 50 kingbirds. So I think there's a flock of kingbirds that were migrating, and they ended up roosting in this tree at night. There's about 50 mixed flock of tropical and western kingbirds in that tree. So of course, maybe get away from Mexican food for a minute. We had this pizza for the night. It was very good. Just more, of course, good food for the trip, of course, and Arriaga. So that night we stayed in Arriaga, like I said. They're in western Chiapas. So the next day we ended up birding our way between Arriaga and Tuxtla Gutierrez and central Chiapas. So we birded a few roads on the Pacific side of the Pacific coastal mountains there just above Arriaga. So this is one of the streams we birded at that morning. Here's me birding on the bridge of that stream. So we saw plenty of new birds for the trip. So this is a yellow olive flycatcher, another lifer for me. More russet crown motmots. Said I already warned you guys earlier on. I'll have many pictures of these since it's one of my favorite birds from trip. We saw plenty of these, but just with the classic motmot tail with a little larger tail ending there. The beautiful russet crown is quite beautiful. So probably one of the best viewing birds of the trip is usually a bird that people usually only hear on these trips. But we ended up hearing this lesser ground cuckoo, and it eventually worked its way up on top of this brush pile, and I kind of sneaked my way up. It was quite ruffled up, as you could tell. It didn't look too pleased with us being there. But there's another picture of it. It's all ruffled up, but it's cool to get good views of this bird. It's cool. So then we worked our way up the mountain a little bit above Arriaga, as I said, working our way up to Tuxtla Gutierrez. A more thicker, more lush environment, which brought some more different birds as well. Here's Dave and I. We had just heard a long-tailed manakin somewhere in there, but we're looking for it. We didn't see the male, of course, but we're looking for it, of course. But this was the location where we finally got the bird, where we got the bird that we came to see, of course, the rose-bellied bunting, formerly known as the Rosita's bunting, a quite stunning bird. Very blue overall with a beautiful white eye ring and a rose-colored breast. This was the reason why we came for the trip, but it was a very range-restricted bird and a bird only endemic to southern Mexico and Chiapas and Oaxaca. Here's another picture of one. We had a few males at this location, so it was good. After worrying the day before we weren't going to see a male, we saw a few males here. So it's good to get that off the list. And another one here, not a male, of course. But after seeing these, after hearing the male long-tailed manakin, we eventually spotted a bird on the way back on the trail we went on. Ended up being a female long-tailed manakin with a small little flock of birds, but typically how manakins are. They can be quite skittish. So he got very quick views of this female long-tailed manakin, which is the life for me. But took a quick little pictures and then it disappeared, sadly, but still good views while it was around. So anyways, from here, we moved our way up. We had a couple other stops, but we moved our way up to Tuxtla Gutierrez in central, kind of west central Chiapas. So we had a quick little couple hours at Sumidero Canyon. So we birded a couple hours here, but because it was in the heat of the day, we ended up coming here at the end of the trip, on the morning at the end of the trip. So we saw some birds here, but we ended up coming back later. So some of the new birds here included this yellow-throated euphonia, which is another lifer for me. Just to give you guys a little scenery, we were a few thousand feet or a couple thousand feet up. I think we ended up being 3,000 or 4,000 feet up here. But it was quite dry. The forest was quite dry, not leaked out yet. So kind of a drier forest. This is another lifer for me. This is the azure crowned hummingbird. It kind of has a bluer cap, but because the light, it's a good picture, but the light, can't really see the bluish, but it's a little smaller hummingbird. And more olive sparrows. I had a couple pictures of them earlier on. Another olive sparrow. There's quite numerous on this trail we were on. Another trogon species, the third trogon species of the trip. So this is a gartered trogon. A beautiful yellow stomach, yellow eye ring, blackish head, greenish back. Love trogons, of course. So it's good to hear these. Actually, I was hearing this male calling for a while. For about 5 minutes, I couldn't find it, and Tony and David were off looking at something else further behind me. And eventually they came up and Dave spotted it within 10 seconds of him walking up. I'm like, I've been looking for this for 5 minutes and you spot it right when you come up. It was cool to see these. We ended up seeing more of these later on as well. And so here's the view of the canyon itself. Quite stunning. I have more pictures of it, of this canyon when we came back 2 days later, but it's quite vertical drop pretty much from 3,000 to 4,000 feet to a water, pretty much a river that was below us. So that was Sumidero Canyon there. So just north of Tuxtla Gutierrez. So we ended up having lunch, had this chicken. It was very good, of course. So then from there, we headed kind of southeast to east, higher up, of course. So we were up 6,000 plus feet. We ended up being around San Cristobal with a different environment. As you can see, there's it's a much more evergreen, more different type of forest here. So of course, because of a different type of habitat, we had a much different array of birds. So this is a white-eared hummingbird. I actually just saw this. I was just in Arizona actually a couple of weeks ago. So I actually just saw this. It's rare in the US, but there's been a couple in Arizona. I just saw it 2 weeks ago. But this is a female white-eared hummingbird. Very crappy picture, but this is a white-naped brush finch. So the first brush finches of the trip. They were being pretty difficult to photograph. This is another lifer for me. And another lifer for me, this next picture, one of the most wanted birds for our trip as well, was this blue and white mockingbird. Quite stunning bird. We actually were expecting to see more than 1 or 2 on the trip, but we actually saw like 3 or 4 this day and another 1 or 2 the other day, the next day when we came to St. Cristobal. So it's nice to see a pair of these up close and getting stunning views, because I was not expecting to get stunning views of this bird. And these can be rather tricky to see sometimes. So we ended up from there. We made, like I said, a couple stops on our way up to this part of San Cristobal. So we went to this region. just west of town where there's numerous electrical towers, but it's on this kind of a hill, quite forested. So we were looking for garnet-throated hummingbird among others at this spot. So this is actually my 900th bird I've checked off before. So my 900th lifer, or not lifer, my 900th species I've ever seen. So this is the golden brown warbler, which is a nice 900th bird. At least it wasn't a plain dull bird. It's quite colorful. So this is the rufous collared robin, another lifer for me. Obviously, same size as our robin, but much darker and has a nice rufous collar here on the throat. As we moved up the hill a little bit, up towards the electrical towers and the cell phone towers, we saw more different birds to the trip. So this is a cinnamon-bellied flower piercer with a unique bill, which is what it's named for. So it's a unique bill there. So yeah, that's what that is. And a few males that were quite responsive and quite active right in front of us. So here's some wrens here that were new. We saw numerous species of wrens up here. So this is, I think it was banded backed wren, or like, it's like, of course, all right, when you get to it, I forget the name, but yeah, it was another new wren species for me, another lifer for me. So I ended up kind of going off by myself for a little bit, kind of went down this one trail. So I was hearing this one trogon, but I couldn't see it, couldn't really see where it was. It ended up right next to me, and I was calling back and forth from. I actually have a video. I wasn't sure if I was going to put it on here or not, but I ended up not doing it. But I have a video of myself calling back and forth with this trogon for about 5 minutes straight. So this is the mountain trogon. This is our fourth species and the last new species of trogon for the trip. It was another lifer for me. So it was such a cool experience talking back and forth with this trogon. Looks just very similar to our elegant trogon, which people can see in Arizona. But yeah, this is the mountain trogon. And a bad picture, but another lifer for me on the trip. This is a common chorus fungus, so another brushier species, but another lifer for me. And then from there, we walked a road up to the cell phone towers, but then we walked this trail back down, getting new birds throughout here as well, more mountain trogons and other things. But you can see it's much more of a half deciduous and half evergreen coniferous forest with a lot of flowering. There's a lot of different hummingbirds up here. We ended up seeing the garnet-throated hummingbird, but I didn't end up getting pictures of it. And like amethyst-throated hummingbirds, some other hummingbirds with all these flowering plants. There's a lot of different insects and butterflies. But it's more of a mountainy type environment. A lot of flowering plants low and a more mixed forest up high. It was kind of an interesting, different habitat than we haven't seen throughout the trip. And then because of the timing we were there, we had the stunning sunset as we were coming down throughout through the trail back to the car. We had this nice little, very narrow opening where the sun was. So it was very, very cool. Try to get pictures of it. Came out as clear as it could be, but very cool sunset on the way back down the trail. So we ended up getting Mexican whippoorwills after that. And then, of course, we had more street tacos in the trip. But it was interesting because I never had pineapple with street tacos. So it was actually, I didn't think I would like it, but it was actually very good. But obviously, more good food throughout the trip, of course. So this was the second to last full day. So we ended up going to, I think it was Ocote. I think it's called Ocote National Reserve. So just northeast of Tuxtla Gutierrez. So this is still back to western Chiapas. So this is more of a cloud forest type environment, I believe. Much more of a tropical feel and much more tropical set of birds as well. Starting with this rose-throated ant tanager. So this was me I ended up sitting on the ground here, but there's actually my lifer stripe-throated hermits were lucking in the forest just off the road. And there's this little opening. I noticed there's this male that kept having this perch just right off the road. It was just right in the open. I was like, oh, if I just sit down, maybe it would cooperate. But no, as you could tell, it was not cooperating. So anytime there's this branch right behind it where the bird was in this picture, it would always come and sit on this branch. And I'll just be sitting there. And anytime I pull the camera up slowly to my face, it would fly right when I got my camera to my face to take a picture. And I eventually just kept holding my camera to my eye to hopefully get a picture of this, but it didn't come back. And of course, right after anytime I put the camera back to my knees, it would always come back and perch there and act like I wasn't there. So at least I got a picture of it, but not the picture I wanted. So anyways, this is another lifer for me, another hummingbird. I think we saw 23 species of hummingbird on the trip. So I think that was the most hummingbird species I've ever seen on the trip. As you guys can see, I have had numerous pictures of hummingbird throughout this program. So besides that, and since we were in a different environment, we were obviously seeing plenty of new bird species as well. So this is another lifer for me, a yellow-faced grassquit. This was not a lifer for me, but this is a bright rumped antilla. It's a type of flycatcher that's seen in Central and South America. And another bird not lifer for me, but another new bird for the trip. This is the Morlet's seed eater. So this can be seen in very South Texas. This is a recent split, but this is the Morlet's seed eater. And of course, there's plenty of U.S. birds down there as well. So this is the magnolia warbler migrating its way back to Mexico. We saw many, if not dozens of these this morning, a very common warbler that was down there at that time. So it's the magnolia warbler, and they're just starting to show up here in Champaign, probably this week. It's one of the more mid to later warblers that show up here, so they should be showing up sometime soon. Rather distant, but this is a white-winged tanager, another lifer for me. You can see the white wing bars on the wing here. But besides that, it looks relatively similar to our scarlet tanager, besides the white wing bars here. So another lifer, this is a long-tailed saberwing. And this is just another picture of what it looked like there, just this gravel road that went up to the small town, right on the edge of the reserve. We actually just had, I think it was Kill Bill toucans just right up here to the right. But I ended up not getting pictures of them. That was another lifer for me, but we added a few lifer birds here right before I left. But this is what it looked like right before we left the reserve. So very thick, typical tropical forest up here in this area. So then from here, we ended up having lunch again at the same spot we did yesterday with the chicken. This is carne asada, some more Mexican style food here. That's very good. So then we ended up going back to San Cristobal, but because we missed one of our targets, the pink-headed warbler, the afternoon before, we went to a spot more reliable for him, but it ended up raining all afternoon. So we ended up seeing the pink-headed warbler twice. Just this very small, all red warbler with a pink head, beautiful looking bird. But because of the rain and because of it being kind of far away, I didn't get any pictures of it, but it was another lifer for me. But we ended up, and because of the rain, I really didn't take any other pictures of the birds here, but we heard our first singing quail of the trip. We saw and heard more mountain trogons and a few more western warblers that winter down there, like Townsend's hermit warbler and a few other Mexican warblers like slate-throated redstart and crescent warbler. And we ended up staying into the darkness hours just after dusk, and heard more Mexican whippoorwills, more mottled owls, and my lifer bearded screech owl was calling as well here, which is also very hard to hear and see. But anyways, that was that for the afternoon. It rained for the rest of the afternoon, so I really didn't get any bird pictures for the rest of that day. But anyways, we stayed in Tuxtla Gutierrez again, and we ended up going up to Parque Nacional Cañon del Sumidero. So Sumidero Canyon, where I said the day before, or sorry, 2 days before, I already mentioned that, some pictures from this location, but we actually birded this a few hours that morning. It didn't open till 8, so David and I walked up a couple miles before it opened, because you could walk in before it opened, and saw plenty of new birds for the trip. This is a nice little painting right there at the entrance of the preserve. But anyways, so this is the 300th species of the trip. So this is a plain chachalaca, not a lifer for me. It's actually a bird commonly seen in South Texas, but just the 300th species of the trip. So I figured I would take a picture of it. But I saw plenty of other new birds of the trip here, including varied bunting, a pheasant cuckoo, among other things up there. Some bronze cowbirds, pretty much blackbird-sized blackbird with a red eye. And another social flycatcher. I already had a picture of this from earlier in the presentation, but this was sitting nice on the wire. So like I said, this is our last full day of birding. So this is a good morning here. And we also had Frugious pygmy owls from the parking lot as well. But right after this, the gates opened at 8 o'clock, and we went straight to the first spot, the first main pretty much the main target of the day, the belted flycatcher spot. So this is a very hard to see flycatcher in this region, and a very range restricted bird. So I wasn't sure if we were going to get this, but we ended up having this very cooperative male right in front of us. named just like the belted fly, just like the belted kingfisher, is this nice orange belt right across his chest. But besides that, kind of just looks like our typical peewee, just besides a crest and this orange belt across it. So it's good to add that for my life list and get good views of this amongst the other flycatchers that were here as well. So we went up the canyon a little bit more, seeing plenty of hummingbirds, but of course we still needed to add one or two other species of hummingbirds. So here is the slender sheartail, which is a female slender sheartail. It was another lifer for me, another hummingbird as well. Quite small. And we ended up actually seeing other hummingbirds here, including ruby-throated hummingbirds here as well. Because ruby-throated hummingbirds also kind of winter and migrate through this area as well, amongst other species of hummingbird. And just something different, here's this cool caterpillar that we saw at the same spot. So this was pictured earlier on in the program, but I got better pictures of it here, just after seeing the sheartail. So this is another gartered trogon. This pretty much looks like just the other trogons of the trip, but just has a yellower stomach. It was cool to see and hear these. There's a pair calling back and forth. Here's the other one that was picked, that was with the other one. Yeah, I love trogons, so it's always cool to get good views of trogons. And thankfully, throughout this whole trip, we got good views of most of the trogons that we heard. So more pictures of gartered trogon. So this is a little blurry, I guess. It didn't look blurry when I put it on. This is the Cannavet's emerald, so another hummingbird. We saw a few of these throughout the trip, but this is the first picture I've got of one. So this is also another lifer for me. This is actually a quite gray looking summer tanager, but because the bill, it's a summer tanager, it almost looked like a hepatic tanager, but this is a summer tanager, a species that we see regularly around here and we'll be passing through here soon. I've started to see them around here already, but they will be here soon, commonly migrating through here and nesting around here in Illinois soon. And this is also a bird seen earlier in the presentation, but this is another fantail warbler. These can be quite secretive and quite low. So sometimes these are hard to see. So it's good to see these quite up close, quite cooperative and in the open. So this nice endemic, that's pretty much endemic throughout the entire Mexico, but can be found in Mexico. So it's good to see good views of this bird. And as pictured earlier in the presentation as well, but we got better views of these. This is a pair of yellow-throated euphonias. It's just kind of another seed-eating bird, most closely related to finches here. This is the yellow-throated euphonia. This is a male and female. Here's another picture of a male. But yes, that's the yellow-throated euphonia. And then this is a squirrel cuckoo. We saw numerous cuckoos throughout the trip, like the lesser ground cuckoo I already had pictured. We had pheasant cuckoo earlier on in the morning here, and this is the squirrel cuckoo. And we also saw mangrove cuckoo down by Puerto Arista Bay. I ended up not getting pictures of that, but we had this very cooperative squirrel cuckoo above us for about 5 minutes. It kept flying back and forth. It's the light wasn't the best, but it's kind of a pinkish red overall, pinkish red brown, kind of in between of is this, but also has this very long tail. But anyways, after that, probably one of the most exciting parts of the trip came next. So we were walking back from one of the overlooks, and I was behind David, and I was like, oh, I think there's a quail that just kind of ran beyond us over here. So we crouched low to the ground, and sure enough, we had this small covey of singing quail. We heard them the day before. They could be hard to see sometimes, but we had this small covey of singing quail come right up to us and even started singing. It's interesting getting a picture of a bird doing what it's actually named for. So it was singing right in front of us. I ended up not getting any videos of it, but it was quite noisy. It was quite cool to see these cute little quail run right by us and sing right by us. So it's quite cool to get good views of these at this location. And as I said, we were at the canyon again. So here's another view of the canyon, a quite stunning view. I already talked about the quite vertical quite vertical cliffs here. I talked about the river previously, but you can actually see the small river here, but it's probably, like I said, about 3,000 foot vertical cliff there. So you look down and it's quite, you look down and no matter if you're scared of heights or not, it could do one thing to you or not. It was quite scary looking straight down. But anyways, one way or another, it was a quite stunning view from up here. So We had quick stop for lunch. This is tortilla soup and amazing chicken tostadas with, like I said, avocado was throughout the entire trip. Any meal was pretty much incorporated with avocado. It's quite healthy. I loved it. Ate so well throughout the trip. But anyways, David had to go lead another trip, so he left the afternoon. We flew out the next morning, but I pretty much mentioned a park that we should go look at right by the hotel, about a 5 or 10 minute walk. So I was like, oh, we might as well just go walk for the rest of the afternoon, go to this local park. So this is with the stream in the local park, which ended up netting our another new bird for the trip, a bird semi-common to us here in Illinois, but it was also a new bird for the trip. So black-crowned nighthare. This is a digiscope, so that's why a digi-bin. I took a picture there by binoculars, that's why it's kind of blurry. But another new bird for the trip, and another new bird for the trip. This is the red-lured parrot, very similar to the white-fronted parrot that we actually saw at this location as well, but I had pictures of earlier. But you can actually, I think, see these in South Texas, right? If I'm remembering right, and large populations in South Texas. But anyways, new species of the trip. This distantly nest building Altamira oriole, building a nest semi-distantly there. Another least grebe was in the stream in the park, which I really was expecting to see in this small little stream. It looks much bigger than it is. This just above this small little dam. That's why it's much larger, but it's just chilling out in the stream. And of course, bird-wise, to end the presentation, here's a stunning picture of another russet-crowned motmot. Like I said, one of my favorite birds of the trip. I love motmots, but it's the light was just perfect on this bird. But that was a good little afternoon there. We went to the same place for dinner for the street tacos with pineapples, of course, to end the trip in the day. We ended up flying out at the next morning. I think we got up like at 3 a.m. We had I think it was 6 a.m. flight, I think. But as you could tell, I was a little ready to go home at that point. It had been a long trip, 6 full days of birding. It's quite adventurous, but we saw plenty of birds throughout the whole time. Like I said, 313 species, about 120 of them were lifers. It was a nonstop traveling the whole time, birding nonstop. It was amazing. But anyways, and that was the trip. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. This is another view from the Sumadera Canyon just above Tuxtla Gutiérrez. Another stunning view of the trip. Anyways, if there's any questions, ask away.
That was amazing, Colin. It feels like I just traveled for, I don't know, for a week with you. It's absolutely amazing. So if you have questions, you can type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. I have a question, but I'll give other folks the opportunity to ask first.
Hi, Colin. It's Emery. I have a quick question about, you mentioned how a lot of the times you were seeing birds in these really highly polluted places, but they seem to be, like you mentioned, like really endemic species and also like really restricted species. Do you know how the pollution in these areas are affecting like populations and abundances? Like,
I'm not sure. That's a good question, but I mean, I'm assuming they're doing okay. Because I'm like, even like that rose-bellied bunting that I had a picture of, it was literally feeding like the one with the trash in the background. It was literally feeding in the trash. I mean, I don't know if it's just adapted to that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, most of these areas where they aren't especially like they're not like that completely, but especially that location it was, and they've obviously kind of adapted at least at that location to be with all the trash. But it's kind of interesting to note, though.
yeah, for sure. It would definitely be interesting if they could do a study looking at like whether or not a lot of those species are consuming like the rates at which they're consuming plastic.
Right.
Be pretty interesting. All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emery. Any other questions?
I guess I'll take advantage and ask you my question. This is a bit off topic. I've never heard of a mudmut, but I was wondering, are they related to? I'm also not sure if you get rollers in America, but they seem to look a lot similar to African rollers. Do you know if they are?
Honestly don't know. I mean, I can do a quick search, but I honestly don't. I mean, I'm still very new to the tropical birding realm, so I'm not entirely sure. But their motmots, I think, is only a New World species. They're seen throughout Central and South America. And there's numerous species. We actually only saw the russet crown throughout this trip, but I've seen, like in Trinidad, I saw the Trinidad motmot. There's probably dozens of species of motmot throughout Central and South America, but I'm not entirely sure on that one.
Are they insect eaters?
I believe so. I should know, but I don't. I
They're
don't
so
remember.
incredibly beautiful. So I'm sorry
They
I'm putting you on
are.
the spot. I was just like, they're so incredibly beautiful.
They have such an interesting call too, because it's like maybe you can go listen to it after we're done talking. But it's just like this one note deep hoot. It's weird, but it's interesting.
Very cool.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for Colin? I think Beth had asked or tried to ask a question, but the sound wasn't working.
Yeah, I believe I thought I saw her talking, but I didn't hear her, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, sorry, Beth, we can't hear you. If you had to pick one bird, Colin, is it? I don't know if it's possible to pick one bird, but what was your like number one highlight of the entire trip?
I mean, the highlight was definitely the rose-bellied bunting, because obviously why we went on the trip. It's quite stunning looking. But I mean, the motmot was obviously very cool, but that's a common bird seen throughout the trip. But the motmot was cool. The singing quail experience was cool, because I was not expecting something like that. A few others, like the rose-breasted bunting. There's a few other stunning birds, but it was quite adventurous and quite very full bird-oriented trip. It was good.
Birds and food, I can get on board with that.
For sure, for sure.
Cool. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I want to personally thank you very much. This was incredibly insightful and very beautiful. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you want to share this video with anybody else, it should be posted on YouTube within a week or two. Otherwise, have a really good night.
Sounds good. Thank you everyone for coming.
Bye.